Alrighty, everyone. Thank you so much, and welcome back to another great episode of The Human Role. So we are back again, me and Debbie Morris. You guys saw us a few weeks ago talking about the wellness at work. Now we are talking about emerging strong after a layoff. So really, obviously, in today's time, there are many layoffs happening, unfortunately. There's also furloughs happening as we're in the midst of the government shutdown. And Debbie and I both just thought that it was really, really important for us to kind of help people as they're going along this new journey. You may be in shock. You may have even had some preparation that you were getting laid off, but still when it happens and your last day comes, it does still sting a lot. So everyone out there, as Debbie introduced herself on the last episode, she is a heavy leader, a transition coach, right? During phases like this, she has many clients that have experienced this and she's helped through this process. And so I really wanted her insight on this topic because, it's something that if you're lucky enough to get through your career and not to have experienced something like that, kudos to you. But many of us have experienced it and have gone through, specific journeys. And it is a lot. It can be a lot. So, Debbie, I wanted to at least start off with giving people some foundations when your last day comes, whether it's abrupt or whether you were notified ahead of time. What I like to at least tell people and suggest to friends, and also from my end, what I had to realize too as I'm changing companies is you really need time to reset. Sometimes you unfortunately can't afford to do that. So you have to jump right into the next thing. But if you can afford to do that, it is important to take time to get through that emotional phase, especially if your job and your company has been your identity for, how many every years. Curious if you would agree with that. Help reset yourself, take a moment to breathe before you just take a leap into something else.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You and I were just talking about that. We both have had these kind of experiences. I've helped folks with this type of experience being an outplacement coach in my past. And I definitely had folks who would come and join the call and say, hey, I knew this was coming. I didn't reach out to you before because I didn't know how I felt about this. It's 2 months later and now I'm ready to get to work. Or I had contacted some folks and it was like the next week and they were in tears. And there's a part of layoffs that I just don't feel like people talk about enough is that it is a true grieving moment where you are trying to detach and grieve something that has been lost, especially if you didn't know that it was coming and it was outside of your control. So you go through those stages of grief, and I definitely recommend that people take the time, if they can, if they have the financial runway to be able to do that, to address the parts of emotions that are connected to being laid off.
I think sometimes if you don't, it's really kind of like a breakup. Like I hate to kind of put it to like dating, but like if you're hopping from one to another, it's like take time to like breathe and relax. So naturally, at the end of the day, we don't want to be insensitive to the fact that we all have bills to pay. And so people don't have that luxury to do that. I forgot the percentage, but there is a really high percentage of most people are just one paycheck away.
Yeah.
Being homeless and not being able to cover their bills. And so want to be, sensitive to that as well. But if you can take some time to relax, or if you are, lucky enough to get, some type of severance or agreement, I would say to use that time to really just breathe and reset yourself, and maybe even start something that you weren't able to start or really give all your time to because you were working full time. I think a lot of us have other things that we want to do outside of work, but just the timing of things and you're exhausted after work. So it could be a good time to potentially explore other routes and things and kind of see what your next path is. But dipping into when someone is ready. So you get through your emotional stage, you take your time to reset. But when you are ready, like how you mentioned some of your clients calling you a few months later, I like to say planting seeds is really, really important. And I mentioned in the last episode, and also when I was on Debbie's newsletter recording too, it's like, you do need a village. You do need people around you. And that's very hard for me to say because I'm very strong-willed, and I had went through a phase where it was like I was going to do everything on my own, and then you quickly start realizing, oh no, you actually do need a network. And so I would just say, like, planting seeds. It's okay to update your LinkedIn. It's okay to send out some feelers, to make that post that you may be too prideful to make, but just make the post that you need a role. I mean, you'd be really surprised at how many people will like it and reshare and comment on it so that it gets extended. There's a lot of people on my side that I've seen make posts. And I've just started, I've been at an event and I know several people that are hiring, or I have colleagues that reach out to me and they know companies that are hiring. And I've just sent them job descriptions and just whatever we can do. So it is important for you to just speak up and let people know what you're experiencing. Because a lot of times that is really how you'll get a job, just knowing someone through a company versus submitting the application.
Yeah, and I would wholeheartedly agree. Like, of all the clients in my outplacement firm, we would keep up with wins and people landing. And then the research definitely showed us that people get jobs through other people. I can relate to what you said about the post on LinkedIn. I was totally resistant to putting that post out there just because, number one, I'm more private than sharing, I guess, in terms of my personal life. And then number two, I'd seen other people's posts. I realized that, those were vulnerable moments, but my moment didn't necessarily have to mirror the others. I just used it as an opportunity to be the author of my own story. I created a post that I felt like really reflected me and who I was. And then really after that, I'd gotten a coaching client from that post. I had people call me from that post that I hadn't talked to in forever. It ended up being a really good thing. So like in my coaching, of my transition coaching, like that is a moment, like that's part of the coaching. There's a specific conversation that we talk about in which we describe and discuss what that coming out sort of LinkedIn post is going to be.
Yes, very true. And I think that can also get you to your next level. I mean, maybe it's a transitional phase where you can dip and dab to see what works, for you. And hey, look, maybe you try it out for a little bit and you don't like it, and fine, you end up finding, your next job. But sometimes when you are in a desperation mode, right? And it's like, hey, look, you just got to pick anything, then you're continuing to get into companies where you just don't like, right? And you just, now you're even more disgruntled. So I like what you said, just put some feelers out there, see what happens, let people know, what's occurring, and then can go from there. But I can't have this conversation and not address, obviously, the elephant in the room with where the world is now, where we know it's going, over the next decade, the two letters that are taking over the world, AI, and how I feel like companies are putting a lot into this. So I want to also address how, some of these larger companies that are laying off people, the numbers are high. We're seeing 14,000 people, 10,000 people. In the context of things, when I actually drill down to the percentage, that's typically a very small percentage, like less than 2 to 3%. Now, granted, it's still 10 to 14 plus thousand people getting laid off, which in this time is really still sad. But I know a lot of people see those headlines and it's a very sensitive topic. And I can't necessarily speak for every other industry. I just know, especially my own experience being in the HR tech side of the space, I know that there's always going to be a human element of this, right? There is no robot that can take our sixth sense of certain things. And so we will be needed. But what I've tried to at least tell, my clients and my colleagues that are coming my way is that you may have to start being the person behind the scenes that builds the bot to answer the proper questions, but you're still going to, need to be there when those things happen. And definitely don't run from AI. It's here. Do what you can to try to accept it and learn it as much as possible. And I had a conversation last night with a colleague who is taking time right now as she's following up on some clients to learn a little bit about it and get some more certification. So curious on your opinion there, but then also mainly how you foresee kind of like the future run of things and where, HR is going in that space.
So if you think of AI just as another advancement, right? It just happens to be impacting definitely a large number of people and organizations and businesses. Essentially, we all always have to continue to sharpen our own saw. You have to continue to evolve and grow as a professional. Leveraging AI, learning about AI is something that we all have to do because now it's being incorporated in all aspects of our lives. And there's an expectation that if you see the world changing, that you contribute or you accept the change and you learn the things that you have to learn. As an organization, what I see is, folks who have been proactive and, learned what they have to learn about AI and being able to speak just very foundational talk has gotten them in rooms or in conversations that they may not have had access to before. So I think of it more as a professional development expectation that you know how to do these things and you know how to navigate it. Do I think organizations are just laying folks off and replacing their jobs with AI? From the organizations I've seen and have supported, they are very large. Like those initiatives and those strategies take years to sort of implement, right? So it's not like last year we didn't have AI, this year we have it, and we're going to lay off all these people. It takes time to be able to get your current systems up to a position to be even able to use the AI. So I'm sure you can speak to this, but your current processes, your business processes, and your systems have to be in a shape to be able to do that. So I think it feels like we're running out of time. I still think there's always time to learn, but I think we should focus on learning those foundational elements of AI and just figuring out how it's useful in our lives and how it can be useful in our work. And it's just a step by step approach. I mean, it's one step today, another step tomorrow, and then eventually you'll get to where you need to be.
Yes, very true. It's just a hype. I mean, I kind of think back of like COVID, where it was so crazy, right, in 2020. And now it's like we've adjusted to it and it's still relevant, but it's not as shocking as
Mhm.
it was then. So I think the same thing with AI. Naturally, I think people either forget or don't realize AI has been around for many decades already, right? It's been building its way. And so I think now people are just kind of getting on the boat of it. But it is important, I would say, just to continue to, how Debbie said, continue to evolve and continue to grow and not to look at it as a threat and just as another opportunity. So, as we talk about emerging strong after a layoff, reaching out to your network, connecting with people, going to coffees, lunches, dinners, or there's plenty of free events too if you don't have the funds, like something just to put yourself out there. I promise you, like, even from my end, doing that ended up being so refreshing. The thought of doing it was very like annoying and stressful, especially because at times I can be very introverted. I'm a mix of an ambivert, intro and extro, but very introverted. So the thought of doing that was a lot, but the reward afterwards was really important. So I'd like to just encourage everyone, as you're potentially going through or coming off of a layoff, look around. The world and opportunities and people are endless. And sending us a message that you may not think you're going to get a response to, someone's going to respond. And you just need one. I remember being shocked sometimes when I started doing outreach for my own business and podcasting and stuff, how people would respond. And then, it would evolve into its own. So I do encourage everyone to think about, and I mentioned this also in the article that I did with Debbie, is really think about what this is teaching you and where this is leading you. Sometimes it can be looked at as such a negative thing. And it's not. We're all experiencing different transitions, but there are plenty of support systems out there. And so, really, just you have to take that leap. You have to plant that seed because otherwise, no one's going to know. Like how Debbie said, you may be private like her, but when you put yourself out there, people are very encouraging, will reach out. So, I just encourage everyone to kind of just take a step and get out of their comfort zone a little bit.
Yeah, and I would say, I mean, I look back at the time where I was because I think we met when I was an
Yeah, we
employee.
did.
So
Yeah, both like,
I know. Listen, people always ask me, I would never give up that time for anything. Like, I felt like, Tana, I had worked since I was in high school. Like,
yeah.
I've been working for a long time. Like, I've not had a break outside of my maternity leaves, and that's not a break. I had never not worked. I was definitely like loving the time. Like I joined cohorts and accelerators. I was going to events. I had joined these chambers. And I had committed to myself in that time that I was number one, going to rest and that it was okay to do that. I'd given myself permission to do that. And then number two, as I started looking at my network, I realized my network was very HR dominant. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I was afraid that I was not diversifying the people who I interacted with and that I needed to see a different point of view about what career could be and what life could be. And so, like, during that time, I met so many different people. And like you said, like, you never want to go to the events, but then when you get up and go, you realize you're like, oh, why don't I do this every day? Like, this.
Yeah. And also you mentioning rest too. I had to start I remember, I think it was last year, the year before, I had to stop stressing about, oh my gosh, like my bank account is, my savings is dwindling, and realize, oh, this is actually what you said. Like I have been working since 16, 17 years old. That's really all I knew. It was like, oh, it's okay to breathe. And I will never forget the night I had to sit down and go through my bank account to see what was coming out. I mean, no one judged me out there, but they were just, I was getting my debits. I was not paying attention. I know there's some people out there that are sticklers about every month's finances, but I was just like, whatever. Literally, I was like paying for HBO and I hadn't even logged in HBO in like over 2 years. I was like, what am I doing here? And so going through that. So downsizing a little bit and cutting back a little bit is really important and it's necessary. But that allowed me to relax more and realize it is okay to rest. And look, lots of times I just started getting out and going on walks and reflecting, right? Just something that simple. Like, and no, I couldn't stop at Starbucks and get my drink. And no, I couldn't do this. But fine, I was like getting fresh air and I was outside and I was just thinking about, and sometimes I would think about a plan, sometimes I wouldn't. Sometimes I listen to music and I just would relax. So it can be a good resting phase and period. And then I think now, because I'm not where I would want to be, but I'm getting there and I can see the difference from last year to this year. For me personally, it really is important for me to continue to help people. So anytime I see something come across my feed, I'm always willing to lend a helping hand. I think, Debbie, what you were speaking about, it's the same for other people, right? So if you're thinking that, oh no, you don't want to do this or whatever, like definitely reach out. Multiple people will, come and back you on anything that you need.
Yeah. And I think what you said is so important just because I personally believe, and I think there's research that supports this, is that you don't attract the things that you want under stress when your body is in that fight or flight sort of mode versus a mode of acceptance and understanding and nurturing and love. You don't necessarily have the same creative bandwidth. You don't necessarily feel comfortable and engaged. When you're in that fight or flight mode, you're not necessarily making decisions using all the inputs that you have available to you. You're just trying to survive. And so what I had told my clients, very early on in the transition coaching relationship is that you have to get out of survival mode and get to a place of peace, love, and understanding and acceptance. You have to do something every day for yourself, whether it's going for a walk, or if it's creating a piece of art or doing a project. You have to do something that gets you away from being in front of your computer looking for a job, that gives you a sense of peace and a sense of confidence. So I would always recommend folks go play golf, go do something for free, go to the museum, but you have to tap into that creative energy, positive energy that you're going to need over the long term, because you might be out of work for 2 or 3 times longer than you think you will be. you need to sort of get into the habit of tapping into what makes you great. And that's going to build your confidence for the journey of looking for work.
You guys, if we just get free coaching, I think we got some free coaching. That's very true. Doing something for yourself, like Debbie said, I remember early last year, y'all, sometimes it was literally, okay, I got up out of bed, I showered, I put something on, and then I went over to my couch. I literally, some days, would pick up my phone. I said I was always going to everyday plant a seed. Sometimes it was just picking up my phone, going to LinkedIn, sending a message, putting my phone back down. I just did something, because some days it was just like
that.
raining. And then some days it was like, hey, you know what? I'm going to go outside today.
I mean, self-care can look so different. For me, sometimes self-care was just wearing a matching outfit, like or in matching socks. Like, the kids get to school on time. Like, if they both got on their buses and I got home and I did my walk and I have a matching outfit on, I mean, like, that's winning. You know, so you have to decide what's winning for you. To me, that was winning. I had matching socks, matching outfit, ate something, the kids were happy.
Yeah, sometimes it's just the little things, right? And so when we say planting seeds, it does not have to be massive, right? Sometimes, it could just be any little thing. But this is great, y'all. We got some free coaching from Debbie. Really, really appreciate it. And as mentioned in the last episode, we talked about well-being at work. Please, Debbie will be attached to this post again. Please connect with her, send her a message. Definitely subscribe to her newsletter. So I was recently on it. Yay. Please, we want to just make sure we share all the insights and encourage everyone during this time frame and to really reshift your mindset. Put yourself out there, however hard it is. If you just need also just some venting or just someone maybe that's not in your circle, I mean, please send me a message. I'm happy to also have a call along with Debbie. So, all righty. Well, thank you again, Debbie. Really appreciated having you on.
Thank you. Thank you. This was so much fun.
Yes. Okay, guys. And look, I will be back with another great episode in another few weeks. Bye.